language of exclusion. Try and imagine for a moment that you are excluded from the rest of the group, even though and despite the fact that you are the group leader, the leader of that department, of that organization, of that company, and yet you are excluded because of your race, because of your look and appearance. You are excluded because of your particular leadership style. You are excluded because of how you think. More importantly, how you speak. Imagine that you are excluded because you are in a marriage where there's more than one wife. You are excluded because of your religious belief or the lack thereof. Exclusion means to dismiss, to push aside. It means to disregard, to turn away from, to shy away from, to back away from. The language of exclusion is all about pushing people out. That's the language of exclusion. What does it have to do with women in leadership? And what place does it have in women in leadership? Are you a leader, being also a woman, who is excluding people from the group? For whatever the reason, you may think you're right, others may find you right, and still others may find you wrong. And yet, the language that you present, that you articulate, that you communicate is that of exclusion. You know, exclusion right now in the United States is huge. The country is making history as it relates to change. The communication that is being exploited and exposed, while it is mainly physical, it's also verbal as well as nonverbal. There's rioting, there's fights, there's looting. This is all a part of communication. It's the type of communication that's nonverbal that straight away gets your attention, isn't it? But the language of exclusion is also a part of the history that's going on, not only in the United States, but maybe even in the country where you are right now. The only difference may be that people are not on the streets protesting, looting, and rioting. Another difference might be not that you're black or police brutality. It could simply be because of who you are or your community. Women leaders who allow themselves to be exposed in the language of exclusion are implementing, sometimes knowingly and other times unknowingly, linguistic penalties. You are penalizing someone or a body or group of people or certain type of people. You're linguistically penalizing them because they don't speak the language as you do. There are many different forms of languages other than auditory. And as I said in a previous module, verbal and nonverbal communications. But what I'd like you to understand in this section is how powerful the language of exclusion really is and the destructive manner that it can present in the workplace. You see, as women leaders, we cannot afford to exclude anyone. The base already starts with you. You are already among the race of those you exclude, or you speak or limited thereof in your communication in the same way that those you exclude. Think about it this way. When you exclude someone, are you also profiling them? Are you also discriminating against them? Of course you are. We all are when we allow ourselves to be positioned in that manner. The language of exclusion tells everyone in that workplace what kind of leader you are. In another course, I talk about the resonant leader versus the dissonant leader and how strongly different the two are. A dissonant leader, I'll give you a very good example. Sorry, but I'm going there. Donald Trump. He is the epitome of a dissonant leader. He's disconnected from the entire country. But guess what? He's also disconnected from himself. A resonant leader is not only, as I said in the modules before this one, a resonant leader is not only connected to the people, but understands that their title is only a title, but their leadership capability, that's different. That says you have the heart of the people. I want to also talk a little bit in this part of the course about monolinguistics or lingual and multilingual. Of course, you know that monolingual is one language. Multilingual is many languages. It can be 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Are you a leader who has taken the language of someone working with you and for you, and you have linguistically penalized them because they speak one language? Or the one language they speak is not good enough for you because it's too much of an accent. I've already declared that I have lived in more than 40 countries around the world. I have been exposed and experienced things you can't even dream about, or you can, but you haven't yet. That's how long I've been out there all over the world, living, breathing, engaging, and more importantly, learning. But dare I say this, I know because of my expertise, and I'm not suggesting or conveying that you have to have a certain level of expertise to understand my next statement. Let me give you an example of, let's say, linguistic profiling. When you listen to Indian people from India speak English, there's a certain accent on it. When you listen to Mexicans speak English, there's a certain accent on it. There's a certain rhythm with the way they speak English. While I'm also French, I don't sound like, when I speak English, French people who can also speak English but have never left France. The accent is very different. And what I'm saying now is that, expert or not, you can immediately tell, most people, especially if you're fairly well traveled, can tell when they're talking to someone who's French. Rarely will I, on occasion, meet people, based on my accent, can tell that I'm also French. But they will also sometimes say, but you also sound like you're from the Caribbean. Oh la la. That one always gets me because there's nothing about me that sounds like I'm from the Caribbean. That to me is someone who's not been culturally widely exposed. When you are, you know accents. And typically speaking, you don't even need to be told that person comes from Latvia or that person comes from the UK. I've met Americans who clearly don't know the difference between a UK accent, a Scottish accent versus an Australian one. Go figure. But it's true. It's not a bad thing. It's just that what begins to happen in that instant is the linguistic profiling. And as women leaders, you may be in charge of a department or a company where the language that is spoken is clearly English, and it must be so well articulated that it's monolized, meaning no inflection, but clear, precise, perfect English, meaning no accent, none. Now that may sound like it's linguistic profiling. It is, but not in a negative way, because there are some jobs, for example, that are out there where you hear the voice of a commercial. And sometimes the casting call for that job, and I know because I've done this before years ago, and even sometimes now, I get calls to do voiceovers because of my style of voice and how I sound on audio. So I get a lot of calls for that. And sometimes they will say, are you capable of speaking in a Southern accent? Well, a Southern accent is still an accent, but can you speak like a Southerner? Let me give you an example. I ain't got nothing here but those taters. I don't need nothing else. I just need to be able to get some sleep and make myself feel a lot better. And I'm just going to feel better after I've got myself a belly full of them taters. There are people in America that talk like that. Now, here is what I want you to pay attention to. As women in leadership, let's say someone comes to your office for an interview who talks like that. This is the way they were raised. This is because of the region that they were raised in. That's how they talk. Can you afford to hire them? Can you afford not to? You see, linguistic penalties that would be placed on a woman or a man who talks like that means you don't want to be sued for discrimination. So you go ahead and hire them, but you put them in a dark place in the business, a place where the only people that's going to hear them talking, communicating, is the person sitting next to them. That's it. That's linguistic penalties. You're placing a penalty on that person because of how they talk. And I do understand that some positions obviously call for someone who doesn't speak in that manner. But understand this also. When you devalue someone as a woman in leadership because of how they communicate, not so much based on their linguistic capability, the fact that they may have a wide range of knowledge of the English language and the command of it, you're not even looking at that when you linguistically penalize someone and just don't hire them, or hire them and put them in the mailroom. Go figure. But that is what the language of exclusion is all about. Oh yeah, you've made them a part of the hiring phase. They got the job, but it's where they've been put in that job that declares by you as the woman leader that they're not worthy of being in the upper echelon group of people. You are essentially making fun of them and, get this one, declaring that they are a little bit stupid because of how they talk. Oh, dangerous. But that, my friends, is the language of exclusion. We exclude people all the time based on how they talk. We show respect to people with certain types of accents. I've watched with my own eyes in malls, in coffee shops, everywhere. People stand up and take notice when they hear a British accent. Whoop-de-doo. I mean, understand what I'm telling you. As people, that nonverbal and verbal style of communication, ooh la la, it's everywhere and it's in us all. And some of us are acutely aware of when we're doing it. And many of us, or many of you, are not. Lastly, I want to explain that when we are confronted with a person who may not have the gifts you do in communication, a failure to embrace them and dismiss the fact that they, and I said fact, dismissing the fact that they are more than capable in adding value through social cohesion, productivity, multiculturalism, bringing in a multiplicity of value towards other nations, other cultures, not devaluing your company or your department, but actually uplifting it and allowing for a more pristine social engagement, a more pristine social cultural understanding. When that is done, the language of exclusion becomes the language of inclusion.